The advice to start a side hustle is pretty commonplace online today. If you want to make some extra income or are working towards leaving your job and pursuing financial freedom, you've probably been told to start a side hustle. However, is it actually the right advice? Is it actually something that you should do? What goes into it? Well, keeping everything simple, let's dive into not only the startup cost of a side hustle, but also what it takes to really get one up and running. Let's dive right in. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow student, Michael Klukas, and in this show, we boil down complicated topics into simple and actionable tips. So, as I mentioned, there is a lot of startup cost that goes into a side hustle, to making one, to maintaining one. There's not only the financial aspect to it, which is very important, but there are other pieces that are equally important. But the very first thing is, why a side hustle? Well, as I mentioned earlier, so many people have a side hustle. So depending on what you actually, look for, according to the Bankrate survey, 36% of U.S. adults have a side hustle as of 2024, which is a slight decrease from 39 in 2023. From the self-incorporated website over here, we have 45% of working Americans currently have a side hustle. 30% say that side hustle is needed for covering their basic needs. On a Fortune article, more than 1 in 3 Americans have a side hustle. So really, anywhere you look, again, side hustles are pretty prominent. The idea of a side hustle is pretty prominent. Like a quick YouTube search overall shows you, hey, there are a lot of people talking about side hustles and a lot of people that have ideas and suggestions on what to do for a side hustle. But is it right for you? That's the real question. So the very first thing we have to go over is the idea of the startup cost. And the first one that comes to mind is the knowledge deficit. So what is a knowledge deficit? When I'm referring to that, it is based on the general term for it, not the nursing one. But a knowledge deficit is a lack of knowledge in a specific area, such as nutrition, medical knowledge, or the humanities. But I'm broadening the definition of that to also include just a knowledge deficit when you don't have enough information to make actionable or take action towards the goals that you have or create the outcome you desire. So when there is a knowledge deficit with a side hustle, it's you don't know the ins and out of the system that you're working on. You don't fully know the correct copy to put onto your listings. You don't know how to take photos or product videos, and there's all these little compounding pieces that you can learn as you go along. However, the key point there is that in the beginning you have a knowledge deficit. So it's not so much that the person who's making, a couple $100 here or there is super high end and they have everything completely dialed in. It's they have the first couple of steps completed. They're a couple of steps ahead of you. And that's where we have to just pay attention to what is your knowledge level. Are you coming into a side hustle a complete beginner? You saw someone talk about it online and thought, you know what? That sounds like a good idea. Versus, hey, I have a bit of a knowledge advantage here. I am passionate about this, or this is a hobby of mine. I want to try to monetize it a bit more. Photography is a great example. You have people that just love taking photos in general, but if they want to turn it into a side hustle, they can actively charge for graduation photos. They can charge for engagement photos. They can charge for family photos, self-portraits, whatever it is. They can take that skill and that hobby that they developed and monetize it from there. But that's because they already have the knowledge and the ability to display good pieces of work versus someone who's never picked up a camera before and decides, you know what, I'm going to start a photography business tomorrow. They could do it. There's just going to be a lot more hurdles because of that knowledge deficit. And real quick, thank you guys so much for watching. And if you are finding any value on this, if you watch this on YouTube, make sure you leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Ring that notification bell so you know every time that we upload a new episode. It really does help us out so much, and I greatly appreciate it. If you're listening to us on Spotify or a podcast app, then make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and give us a follow. That way you know, again, every time I upload a new episode. And it just stokes my ego just a little bit more. But with that, let's jump right back into the podcast. The next one is talking about the true financial cost. Now, I'm going to use Etsy as an example here because with Etsy, when you are creating a listing, it costs a couple cents to actively list an item. You have to actively make the items. So whether that is gathering the materials needed to make your art piece or to drop ship whatever you are getting delivered to people. But there's a lot of extra costs that go into it. And just to list off a couple of them, so it's not only like the listing fee and the material fee, then you also have to think about package and handling. You have to think about shipping insurance. If you're shipping some really expensive items, then you have to think about the cost of driving to and from delivery points and however you're choosing to deliver your goods and your product to people. But the financial costs here, you have to consider everything. There is a YouTuber who I really like, and they are, let's see here, let me pull them up real quick for you guys who are watching this. So it is a guy named Jensen Tung. So he does a lot of business and finance videos, but he has a good focus on helping people get started on side hustles. But he not only dives into what he does on a day-to-day basis with the businesses that he does run, but if he's experiencing or trying out some of these side hustles, some of the big important ones are what's it take to start a laser engraving business in 7 days? I tried the easiest Christmas side hustle for 30 days, or how to get sales like $1 million Etsy stores. And he goes into what it actually costs to make some of these. So like I tried the easiest AI side hustle for 30 days. He not only talked about, hey, this is what I made or what went into it, because we tend to not think about the listing fees. We tend to not think about the subscriptions that we need to certain services. And he dives into all of it. And if I remember correctly, like on some of these videos, he loses money and he doesn't make anything. And it might be he loses only like $30 or $40 because he had to invest in getting things up and running. And the first couple sales don't cover that startup cost. So with that, we have to just remember with the starting a side hustle, the startup cost itself can actually be much larger than we anticipate if we don't have that proper understanding of the site we're using, not only the cost of materials, but the cost to produce our items, as well as the cost of our time, the cost of shipping. So just be aware of this when considering, is a side hustle right for you? Do you have enough of an understanding of what you're actually going to have to financially put into it to get the thing up and running? And no, that's not meant to scare you or anything. That's meant to just be a financial heads up that there is going to be hidden costs that you don't think about when you are getting started. Like for myself, when I started listing on Etsy originally a couple years ago, I didn't know about the listing fees. And so it surprised me. And then also to keep them up and running, the listing fees expire like every 3 to 6 months, if I remember correctly. And it just, is another little hit here or there if I don't make any sales. So it's just important to know the true financial cost of not only starting a side hustle, but maintaining it and keeping it up and running as well. And not only is the knowledge deficit and the financial cost important, we have to consider the time. You only have so much time in a day. Now, if you're working the normal like 9 to 5, 8-hour, 10-hour days, that eats into the other time that you can spend on this, the time that you can actually dedicate towards a side hustle. So if we're going off of like 8-hour days, then you have 8 hours of work from your 9 to 5, you have 8 hours of sleep because you need to get a decent amount of sleep, and then you have 8 hours of technical free time that you can use to dedicate however you wish. That's where the problem comes in. There's only so much time that you have that you can use effectively while still maintaining a good balance and quality of life. Now, if the side hustle happens to be something you enjoy, it's a hobby, and it's just fun and a good way for you to not only build something that can make you money, but also get some stress relief, fantastic. It's a fantastic combination. But you have to understand then that you still are dedicating a lot of time towards what it actually, what you can actually do. So best example I have is for myself. I don't work 8 hours. I work 10. And so that instantly eats into my evenings and afternoons. So my decision was to wake up at 5 a.m. That's why I've been doing that for over 1,000 days for the past 4 years here, waking up at 5 in the morning. So that way I have time to work on both this YouTube channel and this podcast, as well as working on my other projects and the other side hustles that I do have, and as well as self-improvement and Spanish practice and my fitness. It's just waking up early is a way for me to get these things done, still work my 10 hours, and then still have my social life and my married life in the afternoons and evenings. But there's only so much time that I can then dedicate towards building this side hustle, improving my craft, and improving what I can do. And it's going to vary for everybody. Someone might have more time because they work a condensed job. They might have more flexibility because they are in a position in their career that they can demand a bit more flexibility. And it really depends on working with your situation. And that depends truly on what you have available at your disposal. So maybe you have to wake up earlier. Maybe you have to take the extra hour in the morning to work on something, or maybe it is on the weekends or the days off, you dedicate 2 to 3 hours of real deep work and building the side hustle. You just have to find what works for you and understand that the cost of time is going to be different depending on what you choose to do for a side hustle and also when you choose to do it. Real quick, if you are enjoying this episode, then you might also enjoy our weekly newsletter, the Keeping Everything Simple newsletter. Yes, there is a very obvious naming scheme going on here, but that's besides the point. If you want to get an inside look into how some of the lessons and stories I talk about play out in my life, then the weekly newsletter would be a great way to dive deeper into that, as well as getting resources and recommendations for books, articles, other YouTube videos that will give you greater insight into some of these complicated topics and how we're going to be able to boil them down more and more together. Subscribe down below in the link in description to the Keeping Everything Simple newsletter, and I will see you in your inbox. All right, let's get back to the podcast. The next question is the idea of sustainability, growth, or freedom. What are you prioritizing the side hustle for? So I like the question of, do you want a lifestyle business or do you want an exit? Are you trying to build the next great startup where this replaces your 9-to-5 job and you're able to get this company one day listed on the stock market and you're able to be paid out and step away from it knowing that you built this huge company? Is that what you want? Or do you want a lifestyle business? Something that provides you with the flexibility to travel for 3 to 4 months out of the year, that allows you to pick up your kids from school and drop them off every single day, one that allows you to have Fridays off so that way you can have dedicated family days or dedicated time to work on your other crafts. Maybe it allows you to work a condensed, the magical 4-hour work week from Tim Ferriss. Whatever it is, you have to consider what is the goal you are working towards. And for myself, you will probably hear, if you listen to things like My First Million, the idea that a lifestyle business is cute, but also a lifestyle business really makes sense. And it kind of hits that sweet spot of, for myself anyways, allowing that flexibility of, I get to set my own schedule, I get to determine what I spend my extra free time on, and I get to have fun while doing it. To me, that's a fantastic combination, but that's not going to be the same goal for everybody. Some people may really want to build up a side hustle into something that they can sell off as an asset to another larger company while they themselves reap the profit afterwards. But ultimately, I think it really depends on what your goal is. Are you going for sustainability? Are you going for growth? Or are you going for freedom? There's different ways to get to freedom, but it just depends on what you are more geared towards and what your predisposition is leading you down. And then we have the question of, do you have the resources to make it work on your own? Now, if you think that you have to get a team in place, you start hiring people before you ever get a product out the door, then you're kind of doing it wrong. You should start with a minimum viable product if you are really trying to get a side hustle up and going. The easiest, lowest barrier to entry that you can possibly make it and start promoting it. Start telling people that this is what you're doing now. You have a side hustle, and if they're interested, this is a great way to support you on taking your lowest package or your lowest bundle or trying out this service or this new product that you just launched, whatever it is, you have to consider, do you have the resources to make it work on your own first and foremost? Because if you're able to actively build a side hustle, you're able to dedicate time to it, you're able to start building systems around it and making this a repeatable process for you, and that's just on your own, then at that point, you'll be able to ratchet up the intensity and earn more. You'll be able to either buy back a bit more time and create more flexibility. You'll be able to potentially hire on somebody to help alleviate some of the work, so you get to actively grow the side hustle more while still maintaining a pretty low level of, I would say complexity. But it's important to know if this is something that you need extra help for or that you need to bring in a team for, then you have to, again, consider what's the goal: sustainability, growth, or freedom. And that will determine what route you're trying to go here. So just keep that in mind. If you can make it on your own, that's the first goal, because it's the minimum viable product. It's not about having this huge conglomerate suddenly made before you ever launch a product. It's instead the idea of, I have created something, I can get this listed, I can put this up for sale, and I can start telling people about it right away. And I talked about this at the very start of what's the goal for having a side hustle. Is it financial freedom? Is it just to have a little bit of extra fun money? But have a goal in mind. You need to have one in mind for a side hustle. Not because of a possible exit in the future, but just because it's going to help you direct your efforts. If you just have the idea of, it'd be nice to have this or that, or it'd be great to have a couple extra bucks to spend each month on eating out, that's fine and that works. For some people, that's really the goal. But in other instances, it's like, hey, I'd really like to have an extra $500 a month that I can put towards my mortgage, I can put towards rent, I can put towards my car payment, I can put towards any number of things. And that in of itself is a fantastic goal. It's specific, it's timely, and it's attainable if you take the right steps. But having just a goal in mind will make life easier for you, because you are knowing what you're aiming towards and not just trying to take a shot in the dark. And you're instead having a distinct path that you're trying to work backwards from, essentially, of like, all right, if I want to make $500 a month, here's what other people with similar side hustles have done. Here's how I can work backwards and make this happen. If you're looking for an entry into journaling or just want to get more mindful about your own productivity, then go ahead and check out our daily review journal. This is the first edition of that journal. Available now on Amazon. Combining my own kind of journaling prompts throughout the day, it is an easy way to get you into journaling, along with easy formatting to follow. So from daily gratitude to a daily review, along with goal setting using tomorrow's daily highlight, and ending with any notes and miscellaneous reminders that you might have for yourself. It is a fantastic way to, again, start the habit of journaling, as well as get more intentional about how you control your own view of life and your day-to-day. So this is just one step in that direction on how I can help you guys do that. But follow the link in the description down below to pick one up today. And with that, let's jump right back into the podcast. So why exactly, though, do I keep talking about side hustles so much? And I have done quite a few, both from the public speaking and hosting events where I've got paid to do so. The ones that I currently run right now, my Etsy store, which sells spray paint artwork. So if you want to actually check that out, KES Studios. But starting right now, it just has a bunch of stickers on there. But I used to do things like farmers markets where I would actively have a stand and I would be selling my products to customers and they coming in. I have these pieces for sale that are original handmade pieces. And then the stickers are used like for Sticker Mule, which I'm not sponsored by. But that was the first one I started a couple years ago, and it's kind of just running in the background. If I make a sale here or there, fantastic, but I don't actively put in a lot of work into it, at least not for my current goal. And then right now, I sell computers on Jawa.gg, which again, also not sponsored. But on this site, I am creating gaming computers and I'm selling PC components. Like just recently, we had a Black Friday sale, and so I was able to sell 2 of these systems, and that went over really well. But I've been selling on here for about 8 months now, since like it was closer to the start of this year where I started actively selling computers, and it turned into a hobby for me. It was super interesting to listen and learn about computers and building them. And I figured, you know what, let me take a crack at this and make this into a side hustle. And it's been less of a priority and more of a fun way to kind of have adult mechanical Legos, but still to build a skill and at the same time know that I can make money from it. But that brings into the question, because I'm using sites that have systems behind them, you have to be able to build systems for success. And this is like the simplified actionable tips, because we want to talk about how do people find your business. If I am using a site like jawa.gg, I know that people that come to this site are distinctly coming here for gaming components. So they're either coming for custom PCs, they're coming for the GPUs, they're coming for peripherals, they're coming for like CPUs, whatever it is, there is a market for it. And then the same thing is true with Etsy. If you are on Etsy, then you know that you are coming for more crafted, handmade goods that someone is putting time into. And this means that these sites have a dedicated base that people are already, coming to for a certain reason. And because of that, that means you have to decide what is the system that is in place that helps people find your business. And if you were to be a Facebook Marketplace reseller, then people are coming to Facebook Marketplace for any number of goods, for any number of reasons. However, they're not coming for your specific item. If you have an Etsy store and you have a handcrafted good, maybe you really like crocheting and you want to sell like hand knitted scarves or gloves or sweaters, whatever it is, then Etsy makes a lot of sense. Maybe you are a graphic designer and you want to sell a couple of t-shirts, then it might be using Printify to host a site that allows you to print on demand your designs onto shirts. And maybe you're a digital artist, or not digital artist, but an author, and you want to write. And so you use Kindle Unlimited from Amazon Self-Publishing. But the whole thing is, how do people find your business is the question that you have to answer and take action on figuring out what site works best. Now, this doesn't mean that you should face decision paralysis on this overall, but you should pick a site and stick to it for the time being. So that way you at least know what's working for you. The other actionable tip here is that you need to make sure that you are logging your expenses and your profits accurately. So as I was talking about earlier, for the true financial cost for it, you have to think about the cost of acquiring the products. For myself, on the spray paint business, it was poster board and spray paint and stencils and just all these other pieces needed to make a piece of artwork come to life. For the PC parts, it's very obviously things like a graphics card, things like a case, a CPU, a combo deal from somewhere. How am I procuring the parts I need? And how are those expenses eating into the profits I can have overall? And then not only that, you have seller fees from sites like Etsy and Jawa, because they have to take a cut somewhere to maintain profits for themselves as well. And so it's important that you recognize what seller fees might look like, if you have any, or just what profits in general you are going to be making from your service or your product. A good example is going back to photography. If you're starting out with self-portraits and graduation photos, then you might not have a seller fee from Etsy, but you might have a web hosting fee from Squarespace or from Google domains or Google websites, because you're trying to get a landing page created for people to find your business, and at the same time you may have to pay a little bit for that on a monthly basis. And this is just what you have to consider on what are the expenses and what are the profits. So whatever the side hustle you choose to pursue is, if you choose to pursue one, make sure that you understand what the expenses are and track them religiously, because that will determine what your true profits are. And the final actionable tip here is, don't lose the joy of the side hustle. Don't lose the joy of the craft. You may have chosen a side hustle simply because it sounded lucrative, and yes, that is perfectly fine. I want to emphasize that. But at the same time, you may have chosen a side hustle because you really enjoyed that hobby in the beginning. You really loved that process. So don't lose sight of that. it can be super easy to think about, how am I going to optimize my copy? How am I going to get the best looking photos and product videos? How am I going to get the best website designed? And how am I going to get whatever to be perfect? But it won't be. And that's important for you to understand, because if you are trying to make a side hustle, then you want to also make it sustainable. And that means finding the joy in what you're doing, holding on to it, and not letting the promise of money and riches distract you from the fact that you wanted to do something for a good reason. And you wanted to do something that you enjoyed, that you actively wanted to dedicate time towards. So even if it can be compelling to say, I'm going to make this much money a month from this, if you are dreading even working on it later on down the line, then you've lost the actual joy of it. You've lost the thing that made it worth it to even begin with. So just keep that in mind, of not letting the outcomes and the stress around it prevent you from actively enjoying what you do. Because side hustles are getting more and more common. And sometimes the best side hustle also might simply be just getting a second part-time job. There's a lot of things that we can classify as a side hustle, but in the end, it's about the goal that you have. It's about having people find your business and know what you're selling, and then not losing the joy of that process as well. Because you want to naturally pick something that you have a good advantage in, either through natural talent or through an education advantage, and something that you actively want to pursue and put time into, but not losing sight in the beginning of the goals that you set and the reason that you even begin to venture down this path. So it's not for everybody. Some people may just need a second job. Some people may just need to do something like Uber or DoorDash. But in the end, side hustles are a fantastic way to earn extra income. They're a fantastic way to build a skill set, add something to your resume. They're a fantastic way to explore what's out there and what's possible. And finding what makes sense for you is something that I believe is possible only if you dedicate the time to it and are open to what the journey may reveal along the way. With that, don't forget to like and subscribe if you watch us on YouTube. Make sure you ring that notification bell so you know every time that I upload a new episode. If you're listening to us on Spotify or a podcast app of choice, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating. That really helps us out so much, and I greatly appreciate it. It helps also share the show with other people just like you. But with that, have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all in the next episode. Go out there and do great things. We'll see you next time.